The security guard at the fancy hotel in Victoria Island pushed Samuel away from the glass doors for the third time that evening. His designer shoes, now cracked and dirty, scraped against the marble steps as he stumbled backward. "Please, just let me use the phone," Samuel begged, his voice cracking. "I need to call my brother." The guard looked at him with disgust. Samuel's once expensive suit was now wrinkled and stained. His gold watch, the last valuable thing he owned, had stopped working weeks ago. The man who used to throw money around like confetti now couldn't even afford a bottle of pure water. "Go away, street boy," the guard spat. "This place is for important people only." Samuel's stomach growled loudly. He hadn't eaten anything in 2 days. His phone had been disconnected months ago, and his fancy car had been taken away by the bank. All his friends had disappeared when his money ran out. Now he stood outside the very hotel where he used to spend thousands of naira every weekend, and they wouldn't even let him step inside. But what Samuel didn't know was that at that exact moment, just 3 floors above him, his twin brother Daniel was signing the biggest business deal of his life. A deal worth 50 million naira. A deal that would make Daniel one of the richest men in Lagos. And Daniel had no idea that his brother was starving on the street below. 6 months earlier, "Boys, come here," Papa Adebayo called from his hospital bed at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. His voice was weak, but his eyes were still sharp. The old man had built his construction company from nothing, working day and night until he became one of the most successful businessmen in Lagos. Samuel and Daniel, both 25 years old, rushed to their father's bedside. They looked exactly the same on the outside, tall, dark-skinned, with kind eyes that came from their mother. But inside, they were as different as night and day. "I don't have much time left," Papa Adebayo said, coughing softly. "I want to divide my wealth between you two." The brothers looked at each other. They had always known this day would come, but hearing their father say it made their hearts heavy. Papa Adebayo continued, "I'm giving each of you exactly the same amount, 25 million naira each, plus equal shares in my company." Samuel's eyes lit up. 25 million naira. He was already thinking about the cars he would buy, the parties he would throw, the expensive clothes he would wear. Daniel nodded seriously. "Thank you, Papa. I promise to use this gift wisely." "That's my boy," Papa Adebayo smiled weakly. "Remember, money is like water. If you don't store it properly, it will run away. But if you channel it well, it can water many gardens." 3 days later, Papa Adebayo passed away peacefully in his sleep. After the funeral, the lawyer read the will officially. Just as Papa had promised, both sons received exactly 25 million naira and equal shares in Adebayo Construction Company. "What are you going to do with your money?" Daniel asked his brother as they sat in their father's old office. Samuel grinned widely. "I'm going to enjoy life, buy a big house, get the latest cars, travel to Dubai and America. Papa worked too hard. Life is meant to be enjoyed." Daniel frowned. "But Samuel, this money is Papa's life work. We should honor his memory by growing it, not spending it all." "You're too serious, my brother," Samuel laughed. "Money is meant to be spent. What's the point of having it if you don't enjoy it?" That very day, Samuel withdrew 5 million naira from his account. He bought a brand new Range Rover, spent 2 million naira on a huge party at one of Lagos' most expensive hotels, and rented a massive house in Lekki Phase 1. Daniel watched his brother with growing worry, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he used his money differently. He invested 15 million naira back into their father's construction company, bought modern equipment, and hired skilled workers. He used 5 million to start a small tech company that helped construction companies manage their projects better. He kept only 5 million for his personal needs, buying a modest house in Ikeja and a simple Honda car. Within 2 months, Samuel had spent half of his inheritance. His parties became legendary in Lagos. Every weekend, hundreds of people came to eat, drink, and dance at his house. He gave money to anyone who asked, bought expensive gifts for people he barely knew, and traveled to London and Dubai twice a month. "Samuel, you need to slow down," Daniel warned during one of their monthly meetings. You've already spent 12 million naira. At this rate, your money will finish in 4 months. Samuel waved his hand dismissively. Daniel, you worry too much. Look at all the fun I'm having. Look at all the friends I have. People love me because I'm generous. But are they really your friends? Daniel asked gently. Do they care about you? Or do they only care about your money? Of course they're my friends, Samuel said angrily. Not everyone is as boring as you, Daniel. You work all day and night. When do you even enjoy life? Daniel sighed. He was indeed working very hard. His construction company was growing rapidly. They had just won a contract to build a new shopping mall in Abuja. His tech company was also doing well, helping many businesses across Nigeria manage their operations better. But Samuel couldn't see any of this. All he saw was that his brother drove a simple car and lived in a modest house, while he had luxury everywhere. By the 4th month, Samuel had spent 20 million naira. His friends started asking him for bigger and bigger favors. Some asked him to pay their rent, others wanted him to buy them cars. Samuel said yes to everyone because he wanted to keep being popular. I need more money, Samuel told Daniel one evening. Can you lend me 5 million naira? Samuel, what happened to your 25 million? Daniel asked, even though he already knew the answer. I've been investing in friendships and experiences, Samuel said proudly. Money will always come back, but good times don't. Daniel shook his head. I can't give you 5 million naira to waste, but I can offer you something better. Come work with me in our father's company. Learn the business. Build something lasting. Work. Samuel laughed. Brother, I don't need to work.
I'm Samuel Adebayo.
People know me all over Lagos. I can always find money. 2 weeks later, Samuel's bank account showed only 3 million naira left. But instead of being careful, he decided to throw the biggest party Lagos had ever seen. He rented the most expensive event center in Victoria Island, hired famous musicians, and invited over 1,000 people. This will be legendary, he told his friends. After this party, everyone in Nigeria will know the name Samuel Adebayo. The party cost him 2.5 million naira. It was indeed legendary. Newspapers wrote about it, social media was full of videos, and people talked about it for weeks. But when Monday morning came, Samuel woke up with only 500,000 naira left in his account. Meanwhile, Daniel's businesses continued to grow. The shopping mall project in Abuja was going so well that the client gave them another contract worth 30 million naira. His tech company had just signed a deal with a major bank to manage their construction projects across West Africa. But Daniel lived simply. He still drove his Honda car, still lived in his modest house in Ikeja. He saved most of his profits and invested them back into his businesses. Look at my boring brother, Samuel told his friends when they saw Daniel at a family wedding. He has money but lives like a poor man. What's the point? His friends laughed and agreed. But they didn't know that Daniel was quietly building an empire. By the 6th month, Samuel's money was completely finished. He had sold his expensive cars to pay for more parties. He had borrowed money from friends to maintain his lifestyle. But the debts kept growing bigger and bigger. One morning, Samuel woke up in his big house in Lekki to find men at his door. We're here to take back this house, one of them said. You haven't paid rent in 3 months. But I paid for the whole year, Samuel protested. That was 8 months ago, sir. Your lease expired last month. Samuel's heart sank. In his excitement and careless spending, he had forgotten that he was renting, not buying. The house he thought was his for a full year was actually just a 6-month lease that he had extended without paying attention to the dates. He quickly called his friends to ask for help, but strange things started happening. Numbers that used to answer immediately now went straight to voicemail. People who used to beg him to come to parties now said they were too busy to talk. Please, I just need somewhere to stay for a few days, Samuel begged his friend Emeka, who used to eat at his house every day. Sorry, Samuel, Emeka said, not meeting his eyes. My wife said we can't have visitors right now. One by one, all of Samuel's friends turned their backs on him. The same people who used to praise his generosity now acted like they didn't know him. Samuel was forced to move into a small, dirty room in Mushin. The landlord demanded 6 months' rent up front, 120,000 naira. Samuel had to sell his gold chain, his expensive watches, and his designer clothes just to pay the rent and buy food. For the first time in his life, Samuel experienced real hunger. Not the kind of hunger where you're just craving something tasty, but the kind where your stomach hurts and your hands shake because you haven't eaten in days. He tried to get a job, but he had no skills. He had never learned how to do anything except spend money. Construction companies wouldn't hire him because he had no experience. Banks wouldn't give him a loan because he had no income and too many debts. Day after day, Samuel's situation got worse. His clothes became dirty and wrinkled because he couldn't afford to wash them properly. His shoes developed holes. His phone was disconnected because he couldn't pay the bill. The proud young man who used to throw Millionaire parties was now walking the streets of Lagos, begging for work that no one would give him. And still, he was too proud to call his brother Daniel. "I'll figure this out myself," Samuel said to his reflection in a broken mirror. "I don't need Daniel's help.
I'm Samuel Adebayo. I'm smart.
I'll find a way." But weeks passed, and Samuel's situation only got worse. He started sleeping on the street some nights because even the small room in Mushin became too expensive. He begged for food at restaurants, but most people chased him away. One evening, as Samuel sat on a bench at Tafua Balewa Square, watching families enjoy their evening walks, he overheard two businessmen talking. "Did you hear about Daniel Adebayo's new contract?" one said. 50 million naira deal with that international hotel chain. They want him to build 5 hotels across Nigeria. "That young man is brilliant," the other replied. "His construction company is now one of the top 3 in Lagos, and his tech business is expanding to Ghana and Kenya." Samuel's heart stopped. Daniel? His boring brother Daniel was becoming one of the most successful businessmen in Lagos? He thought about all the times Daniel had tried to warn him, all the times his brother had offered to help him learn the business, all the wise words he had ignored. Now Samuel understood what Papa Adebayo meant when he said money was like water. Samuel had let his water pour out through holes he was too excited to notice. But Daniel had built strong containers and channels that made his water grow into rivers. That night, Samuel made a decision. He would swallow his pride and go to his brother. Not to ask for money, he was too ashamed for that, but maybe just to apologize. To admit that Daniel had been right all along. But first, he wanted to see his brother's success with his own eyes. Maybe if he went to one of those fancy hotels where Daniel did business, he could catch a glimpse of his twin brother. Just to see how well Daniel was doing. Just to understand what he had thrown away. That's how Samuel found himself standing outside the luxury hotel in Victoria Island, wearing dirty clothes and shoes with holes, being pushed away by security guards who didn't know that the successful Daniel Adebayo's twin brother was starving just outside their door. As Samuel sat on the hotel steps, holding his empty stomach and fighting back tears, he looked up at the tall building above him. Somewhere up there, his brother was living the life Samuel could have had if he had made different choices. But what Samuel didn't know was that Daniel was about to make a decision that would change both their lives forever. A decision that would test the true meaning of brotherhood, forgiveness, and second chances. High up in the hotel's executive conference room, Daniel had just finished signing his 50 million naira contract. As he shook hands with the international investors, one of them looked out the window and pointed down to the street. "That's quite sad," the investor said casually. "That young homeless man has been sitting on your hotel steps for hours. Security keeps chasing him away, but he keeps coming back." Daniel glanced out the window, and his blood turned to ice. Even from 5 floors up, even with dirty clothes and a thin face, Daniel would recognize that silhouette anywhere. It was Samuel, his twin brother, his other half. And Samuel was dying on the street while Daniel was making millions. The contract papers slipped from Daniel's hands as he ran toward the elevator, leaving the confused investors behind. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. How long had Samuel been suffering? How long had his proud brother been too ashamed to ask for help? And why hadn't Daniel tried harder to find him? As the elevator descended toward the ground floor, Daniel prayed he wasn't too late to save the only family he had left in the world. Daniel burst through the hotel's glass doors so fast that the same security guard who had been pushing Samuel away stumbled backward in surprise. "Sir, you can't run like that in the hotel," the guard called after him. But Daniel wasn't listening. His eyes searched frantically across the busy Lego street. Cars honked loudly as people hurried home from work. Street vendors called out their prices. But where was Samuel? There, on a bench across the street, under a flickering streetlight, sat a thin figure with his head in his hands. Daniel's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. The brother he remembered was strong and confident, always laughing, always the center of attention. But the man on that bench looked like a skeleton. His clothes hung loose on his body like they were made for someone twice his size. His shoes had holes so big that his toes showed through. Daniel ran across the busy street, ignoring the angry honking of Danfo buses and Okada riders. "Samuel," he called out. The thin man looked up, and Daniel saw eyes that looked exactly like his own, but filled with shame and exhaustion. "Daniel." Samuel's voice was barely a whisper. "Is that really you?" "My brother," Daniel said, tears streaming down his face. "My dear brother, what happened to you?" Samuel tried to stand up, but his legs were too weak. Daniel quickly sat beside him on the bench and pulled his twin brother into a tight hug. Samuel felt like he weighed nothing at all. "I'm sorry," Samuel whispered into Daniel's shoulder. "I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. I wasted it all. I wasted Papa's gift. I wasted my life." "Shoo," Daniel said, holding his brother tighter. "We'll talk later. Right now, we need to get you some food and medical attention." Daniel helped Samuel to his feet and slowly walked him back to the hotel. The same security guard who had been pushing Samuel away all evening now watched in shock as Daniel, one of the hotel's most important guests, gently guided the street boy through the front doors. "Get us a room immediately," Daniel told the front desk clerk, "and send up the hotel doctor. My brother is sick." The hotel staff moved quickly. Within minutes, Samuel was lying in a soft bed in one of the hotel's best suites, while a doctor checked his blood pressure and heart rate. "He's severely malnourished," the doctor told Daniel quietly. "How long has he been without proper food?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted, feeling guilty that he didn't know his own brother's condition. "Maybe weeks, maybe months. We need to be very careful about feeding him," the doctor explained. "If someone hasn't eaten properly for a long time, eating too much too fast can actually be dangerous. Start with small amounts of soft food." After the doctor left, Daniel ordered rice porridge, plantain, and vegetable soup from the hotel kitchen. He sat beside Samuel's bed and slowly fed his brother small spoonfuls, like their mother used to do when they were sick as children. "Tell me what happened," Daniel said gently. Between small bites of food, Samuel told his story. About the parties and the expensive lifestyle. About how his friends disappeared when his money ran out. About sleeping on the street and begging for work that never came. "I was so proud," Samuel said, tears rolling down his thin cheeks. "Too proud to call you. Too proud to admit I had made terrible mistakes." "But I should have looked for you," Daniel replied. "I should have checked on you. I was so busy with my businesses that I forgot about the most important thing, my family." Samuel shook his head weakly. "No, brother. You warned me. Many times. I just refused to listen." They sat in silence for a while, both thinking about the choices that had led them to this moment. "Daniel," Samuel said finally, "I heard those men talking about your success. 50 million naira contract. Multiple businesses. You've become everything Papa dreamed we would become." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "The money doesn't matter, Samuel. None of it matters without family." "But it does matter," Samuel said firmly. "You honored Papa's memory. You built something lasting. While He gestured weakly at himself. "I became a disgrace to the Adebayo name." "You're not a disgrace," Daniel said strongly. "You're my brother. You're Papa's son. That will never change." The next morning, Daniel canceled all his meetings to stay with Samuel. He helped his brother take a shower and bought him new clothes. Samuel looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. It had been months since he had looked clean and presentable. "What happens now?" Samuel asked as they sat in the hotel restaurant, sharing a simple breakfast of bread and eggs. "Now you get strong again," Daniel said. "And then we figure out how to move forward together." "Together?" Samuel looked surprised. "Daniel, I have nothing to offer you. I know nothing about business. I wasted my education partying instead of learning useful skills. I would only be a burden to you." Daniel set down his coffee cup and looked directly into his brother's eyes. "Samuel, do you remember what Papa used to say about the palm tree?" Samuel smiled slightly. It was the first real smile Daniel had seen from him in months. He said a palm tree with one strong root and one weak root will still fall over in a storm. But a palm tree with two strong roots can survive any weather. "Exactly," Daniel nodded. "I've been trying to build our father's legacy with only one root. I need my brother beside me to make it truly strong." But Samuel shook his head. "That's exactly why I need you," Daniel said. "You've learned lessons that I haven't. You know what it feels like to lose everything. You understand the value of money in a way I never will. You've experienced both wealth and poverty. That knowledge is precious." Samuel looked confused. "How can my failures help your business?" Daniel leaned forward. "Remember our friend Kemi from university? She started a company helping rich people's children learn how to manage money responsibly. She makes millions teaching wealthy families the same lessons you learned the hard way on the streets." "But that's different," Samuel protested. "She's educated. She's qualified. And you're experienced," Daniel countered. "You've lived both sides of the story. You can help other young people avoid the mistakes you made. You can work with me to create programs that teach responsibility along with success." Samuel was quiet for a long time, thinking about his brother's words. "There's something else," Daniel continued. "I've been successful in business, but I've failed at something more important. I've been so focused on building wealth that I forgot to build relationships. My employees respect me, but they don't really know me. My clients trust me, but we're not friends. I work all the time and have no life outside the office." "But that's because you're responsible," Samuel said. "No," Daniel replied. "That's because I'm afraid. I saw how you lost everything by being too generous, so I became too cautious. I don't trust people. I don't enjoy my success. I've built a successful business, but I've failed to build a fulfilling life." Samuel realized that his brother was right. Daniel had money and respect, but he looked lonely. Even successful, Daniel seemed to carry a heavy burden. "So you need me to teach you how to enjoy life, and I need you to teach me how to be responsible?" Samuel asked. "We need each other," Daniel said simply. "Just like Papa always said we would." Samuel felt something he hadn't felt in months: hope. Maybe his mistakes didn't have to be the end of his story. Maybe they could be the beginning of a new chapter. "Okay," Samuel said quietly. "I'll try, but I have conditions." Daniel raised his eyebrows, surprised. "First," Samuel said, "I won't take any money from you unless I earn it. I want to work for whatever I get." "Agreed," Daniel nodded. "Second, I want to start from the bottom. I don't want people to think I got opportunities just because I'm your brother. I want to prove that I can be valuable." "Also agreed," Daniel smiled. "And third," Samuel said, his voice getting stronger, "I want to help other people who are in the situation I was in, people sleeping on the streets, people who made bad choices but want a second chance." Daniel's smile grew wider. "Now you sound like Papa's son." Over the next few weeks, Samuel slowly regained his strength. Daniel enrolled his brother in business classes during the day and brought him to the construction sites in the evenings to learn the practical side of the business. Samuel was amazed by how much Daniel had grown their father's company. They now employed over 200 people, and their projects could be seen all across Lagos. But he was even more amazed by how much respect Daniel had earned from their workers. "Oga Daniel is not like other big men," one of the construction workers told Samuel. "He knows everyone's name. He asks about our families. When my wife was sick, he helped pay for her treatment. Samuel realized that while he had been trying to buy friendship with parties and gifts, Daniel had been building real relationships through kindness and genuine care. But Samuel also noticed that Daniel worked too much and rarely relaxed. His brother would arrive at the construction sites before sunrise and leave after dark. He ate his meals quickly while reading reports. He never took breaks or vacations. "Daniel," Samuel said one evening as they drove home from a project site in Acadia, "when was the last time you went to a movie, or played football, or just sat somewhere and enjoyed the sunset?" Daniel thought for a moment. "I don't remember. That's not healthy, brother. Papa worked hard, but he also knew how to enjoy life. Remember how he used to take us fishing at Tarqua Bay every Sunday?" Daniel's face softened. "I had forgotten about that. You've been so afraid of becoming like me, wasting money and time, that you forgot how to live," Samuel observed. "There's a balance between my old way and your current way." That weekend, for the first time in 2 years, Daniel took a day off. The brothers went fishing at Tarqua Bay, just like they used to do with their father. They talked about their childhood, their dreams, and their plans for the future. "I want to create a foundation," Samuel said as they sat on the beach watching the Lagos harbor. "A place where people who have lost everything can get job training and counseling. I want to help them avoid the pit I fell into." "That's a beautiful idea," Daniel replied. "But foundations need money to operate. How do you plan to fund it?" Samuel grinned. The same confident smile Daniel remembered from their youth, but now tempered with wisdom. "By becoming successful enough to fund it myself. You're going to help me build something, and I'm going to use my share to help others." "What do you want to build?" Daniel asked. "A company that teaches financial literacy to young people," Samuel said excitedly. "Schools, universities, even corporate training programs. We'll teach people how to manage money, how to invest wisely, how to avoid the traps that caught me." Daniel stared at his brother in amazement. The lazy, careless Samuel was gone. In his place was a man with purpose, wisdom, and determination. "But I have one more confession," Samuel said, his voice becoming serious again. "I'm scared, Daniel. I'm scared that I'll fail again. I'm scared that people will remember me as the Adebayo son who wasted his inheritance. I'm scared that I'm not really as changed as I think I am." Daniel put his arm around his brother's shoulders. "Fear is good, Samuel. It means you understand the consequences of your choices. But don't let fear paralyze you. Use it to make you careful and thoughtful." As the sun set over Lagos Harbor, painting the sky orange and pink, both brothers felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: complete happiness. Not the fake happiness of parties and material things, but the deep satisfaction of knowing they were exactly where they were supposed to be. But their peaceful moment was interrupted by Daniel's phone ringing urgently. "Mr. Daniel," came the panicked voice of his site manager. "There's been an accident at the Abuja project. The foundation we poured last week has cracked badly. If we can't fix it quickly, we'll lose the entire contract. 30 million naira down the drain." Daniel's face went pale. This was his biggest project, the one that had made him famous in the construction industry. If it failed, his reputation would be ruined, and dozens of his employees would lose their jobs. "I have to go to Abuja immediately," Daniel told Samuel. "This could destroy everything I've built." Samuel stood up, his face determined. "Then we go together. You taught me that we're stronger as a team. This is our first real test." As they rushed to catch the last flight to Abuja, neither brother knew that the next 48 hours would challenge everything they had learned about success, failure, and the true meaning of brotherhood. The crack in the foundation was worse than Daniel had imagined. Much worse. Standing in the harsh Abuja morning sun, surrounded by worried construction workers and angry investors, Daniel stared at the massive split that ran through the concrete like a deadly scar. The foundation that was supposed to support a 20-story luxury hotel now looked like it might collapse at any moment. "This is a disaster," said Mr. Chun, the Chinese investor who had hired Daniel's company. His face was red with anger. "We paid you 30 million naira for a strong foundation, And you gave us this mess. Daniel's site manager, Emeka, stood beside him sweating nervously. Oga Daniel, I don't understand what happened. We followed all the specifications exactly. We used the best materials, the right mixture. But Samuel was walking around the cracked foundation with a strange look on his face. He knelt down and touched the concrete, then picked up some of the loose pieces and examined them carefully. Daniel, Samuel called out, can you come here for a minute? Not now, Samuel, Daniel said quietly. I need to figure out how to fix this mess before our company is ruined. The investors were getting more angry by the minute. We want our money back immediately, shouted Mrs. Okafor, the Nigerian partner. And we're going to sue your company for damages. Please, give me 48 hours, Daniel begged. Let me investigate what went wrong and see if it can be fixed. 48 hours? Mr. Chun laughed bitterly. This foundation is completely useless. It needs to be torn down and rebuilt from scratch. That will cost another 30 million naira and delay our project by 6 months. Daniel felt his world crashing down around him. 30 million naira was more money than he had available. If he couldn't fix this problem, his company would go bankrupt, his employees would lose their jobs, and his reputation would be destroyed. But Samuel wasn't giving up. He had borrowed a hammer from one of the workers and was chipping away at different parts of the foundation, examining each piece like a detective looking for clues. Daniel, you really need to see this, Samuel called out again, more urgently this time. Samuel, please. Daniel snapped, his stress making him lose his temper. I don't have time for your theories right now. This is a real crisis. My entire business is about to collapse. Samuel stood up slowly, his face serious. Brother, do you trust me? The question hung in the air. Around them, investors were arguing, workers were whispering nervously, and the hot Abuja sun beat down mercilessly. Daniel looked at his twin brother, the same brother who had wasted 25 million naira on parties and luxury cars. The brother who had been living on the streets just weeks ago. The brother who knew nothing about construction or engineering. But he also saw the brother who had learned hard lessons about failure and consequences. The brother who had spent weeks watching and learning at construction sites. The brother who had always been smarter than people gave him credit for. Yes, Daniel said finally. I trust you. Samuel smiled and gestured for Daniel to come closer. Look at these concrete pieces carefully, he said, showing Daniel the chunks he had chipped off. What do you see? Daniel examined the concrete. At first, he saw nothing unusual. But then Samuel pointed to something Daniel had missed. See these white streaks? And how some parts are much harder than others. Daniel looked closer and his heart started beating faster. That's not supposed to be there. Exactly, Samuel nodded. This concrete has been sabotaged. Someone mixed something into it that made it weak and unstable. Daniel stared at his brother in shock. How do you know that? Samuel's face was grim. Because 6 months ago, when I was desperate for money, a man approached me with an offer. He said he would pay me 5 million naira to help him destroy your business. He wanted me to sabotage your projects from the inside. The construction site went completely silent. Even the investors stopped arguing to listen. Of course I said no, Samuel continued quickly. But he told me exactly how he planned to do it. He said he would bribe your suppliers to mix weak chemicals into your concrete. He said it would look perfect at first, but after a few weeks, it would start cracking and crumbling. Daniel felt sick to his stomach. Who was this man? Alhaji Musa, Samuel said quietly. Your biggest competitor. Daniel knew the name well. Alhaji Musa owned the second largest construction company in Nigeria. He had been trying to destroy Daniel's business for years, spreading rumors and trying to steal clients. But Samuel, Daniel said, confused. If you knew about this plan, why didn't you warn me? Samuel looked down at his feet, ashamed. Because at the time I was angry with you. I was jealous of your success while I was failing so badly. I thought maybe you deserved to face some problems too. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. I was bitter and foolish. I let my pride and jealousy blind me to what was right. The investors were listening to every word now, their anger turning to curiosity. Samuel continued, "But I never forgot what that man told me. And when I saw this crack, I remembered his exact words about how the sabotaged concrete would look. This is not a construction mistake, Daniel. This is criminal sabotage." Mr. Chun stepped forward. "You're saying someone deliberately tried to destroy our project?" "Yes," Samuel nodded firmly. "And I think I know how to prove it." Samuel asked Emeka to bring him the delivery receipts for all the concrete materials. While they waited, he explained his theory to the investors. "If I'm right, the concrete delivered for this foundation was tampered with at the supplier's warehouse. But the supplier keeps samples of every batch they deliver, just in case there are problems. If we test those samples, we should be able to prove that the concrete was deliberately weakened." When Emeka returned with the receipts, Samuel studied them carefully. "Here," he said, pointing to one receipt. "This batch was delivered by a different truck driver than usual. And look at this signature. It doesn't match the supplier's normal delivery signatures." Daniel was amazed by his brother's attention to detail. "How do you notice things like that?" Samuel smiled sadly. "When you're desperate and suspicious of everyone, you learn to pay attention to small details. My months on the street taught me to notice when things don't look right." They drove immediately to the concrete supplier's warehouse in Abuja. The manager, Mr. Adamu, was shocked when they explained what had happened. "Impossible," he protested. "We use only the best materials and follow all safety protocols." "Then you won't mind if we test the samples from this batch," Samuel said, showing him the receipt. Mr. Adamu agreed, and they sent samples to an independent laboratory for emergency testing. The results came back within hours, and Mr. Adamu's face went pale when he read them. "These results show that someone added calcium chloride and aluminum powder to the concrete mix," the lab technician explained. "These chemicals cause concrete to set quickly at first, making it look strong. But after a few weeks, they create internal reactions that weaken the structure and cause cracking." "But how is this possible?" Mr. Adamu asked, genuinely confused. "Only my most trusted employees have access to our mixing facility." Samuel had an idea. "Can we see your security camera footage from the day this concrete was mixed?" They spent 2 hours reviewing camera footage and finally found what they were looking for. The cameras clearly showed a man they didn't recognize entering the mixing facility late at night, adding chemicals to the concrete mixture, and leaving without being detected by the night guards. "I know that man," Mr. Adamu said angrily. "He's Yakubu, one of Alhaji Musa's senior engineers. He used to work for me, but I fired him last year for stealing materials." With the evidence in hand, Daniel, Samuel, and the investors went directly to the police. Within hours, Yakubu was arrested. Under questioning, he confessed to sabotaging the concrete on Alhaji Musa's orders. "Alhaji Musa paid me 2 million naira to destroy Daniel Adebayo's reputation," Yakubu admitted. "He said if this project failed, no international investors would trust Adebayo Construction again." By evening, Alhaji Musa was also in police custody, facing charges of criminal sabotage and conspiracy to defraud. The investors were amazed by the entire story. Mr. Chun approached the brothers as they stood outside the police station. "Mr. Daniel," he said formally, "we owe you and your brother a sincere apology. You are clearly honest businessmen who were victims of a criminal plot." Mrs. Okafor nodded in agreement. "We want to continue with the project. But first, we want to make sure this never happens again. We'll source all materials from multiple suppliers and test everything independently," Daniel promised. "This experience has taught us to be more careful." "Good," Mr. Chun said. "But we're also going to do something else. We're so impressed by your brother Samuel's detective work and attention to detail that we want to offer him a job as our security consultant. We'll pay him to help us prevent sabotage on all our future projects." Samuel looked shocked. "But sir, I have no formal training in security or construction." "You have something better," Mrs. Okafor smiled. "You have street intelligence and life experience. You notice things that trained engineers missed." That's exactly what we need. 3 months later, the hotel foundation was completely rebuilt with clean materials and extra security measures. Samuel's new security consulting company was already working with 5 different construction firms across Nigeria, helping them protect their projects from sabotage and fraud. But the brothers' greatest success wasn't measured in money. Every Saturday morning, Daniel and Samuel visited a small community center they had built in Mushin, the same neighborhood where Samuel had lived in poverty. The center offered free job training, financial literacy classes, and counseling for people who had lost everything. "Welcome to the Adebayo Second Chance Center," Samuel would tell each new group of students. "My name is Samuel, and I want to tell you a story about 2 brothers. One brother wasted everything he was given, and the other worked so hard he forgot how to live. But together, they learned that success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about learning from failure and helping others do the same." The center had already helped over 200 people find jobs, start small businesses, or get back on their feet after hitting rock bottom. Former street kids now worked as security guards and construction assistants. Single mothers who had been begging for food now ran successful small businesses. Graduates of the program often returned to volunteer and help new students. Daniel's construction company continued to grow, but he now made sure to balance work with family time and community service. Every Sunday, he and Samuel still went fishing at Tarkwa Bay, just like they used to do with their father. "You know what Papa would say if he could see us now?" Samuel asked one Sunday as they watched the sunset over Lagos Harbor. "What would he say?" Daniel replied, "He would say we finally learned that money is like water. It's most powerful when it flows in the right direction, helping many people along the way." Daniel smiled and nodded. Their father's 25 million naira had been just the beginning of their story, not the end. Samuel had lost his inheritance, but in losing it, he had gained wisdom. Daniel had grown his inheritance, but without Samuel's hard-earned lessons about failure and recovery, his success would have been incomplete. Together, the Adebayo brothers had built something their father never could have imagined. Not just successful businesses, but a legacy of helping others transform their failures into foundations for new beginnings. As they pack, "Daniel, do you remember when we were children, and Papa used to say that we were 2 halves of the same whole?" "I remember," Daniel replied. "I finally understand what he meant," Samuel said with a smile. "Separately, we're just ordinary men with ordinary problems. But together, we're something much stronger. Together, we're truly rich." And as the lights of Lagos twinkled in the distance, both brothers knew that they had finally found the kind of wealth that could never be lost, stolen, or wasted. The wealth that comes from love, purpose, and service to others. The poor rich brothers had become truly rich brothers at last. Moral lesson: responsibility, hard work, and gratitude are the pillars of lasting prosperity. True wealth comes not from what we accumulate for ourselves, but from how we use our resources to lift others up. Success is sweetest when shared, and failure is most valuable when it teaches us wisdom we can pass on to others. Comment Part 2.